My college psychology professor gave us an assignment: text your parents I love you and record their reaction. Since both of my parents died years ago, I took the chance to send it to Julian, my adoptive uncle and guardian. The chat window showed typing on and off, but nothing came through for the longest time. 2 hours later, he finally replied, "Don't start having thoughts you shouldn't have." He stripped away every bit of affection he had ever shown me. He blocked my number on Snapchat. He even told his assistant, Marcus, that he never wanted to hear another update about my life. Security guard at Vance Group blocked me from entering the building to see him. Mr. Vance's orders: Hazel, you're blacklisted. He said he'd rather let a stray dog in than you. Whenever I happened to cross his path, he would immediately turn around and walk away. This went on for 6 months until I was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. In my final days, just to stop him from treating me like a stranger, I agreed to go on a blind date with Tristan, a guy Julian had set me up with. For the first time in months, Julian spoke to me with a hint of gentleness. "How are things going with Tristan? Are you two planning the wedding yet?" "It's going well." The tears in my eyes were threatening to spill over. I couldn't bear to ruin this rare, peaceful conversation. So I described the wedding of my dreams, planning it. The venue will be themed with lavender. My favorite. The ring will be a purple diamond shaped like a lavender blossom. The more he listened, the tighter his brows furrowed. Finally, as if he couldn't stand listening to me anymore, he cut me off. "As long as it's being planned, just remember, Hazel, I will always be your uncle. We will always be family. And this place will always be your home." He looked around my room, which was already half empty, and added, "Have you moved your things to Tristan's place?" "That's fine. Whatever you left behind, I'll have someone buy you new ones." Sharp needle-like pain pierced my heart. I forced a smile and shook my head. I probably won't be coming back here to live anyway. Honestly, it wasn't that I wouldn't come back often. I was never coming back. And my bags weren't at Tristan's. They had already been shipped overseas. Dr. Miller had scheduled me with a lung cancer specialist in Switzerland in 3 days, on the day of Julian's wedding to his fiancée, Victoria. I would leave this place for good. Whether the surgery succeeded or failed, I would stay in Switzerland forever. Julian's face darkened slightly. He looked like he wanted to say something else. I spoke quickly before he could. "Julian, do you know what kind of flowers Victoria likes?" "Cherry blossoms," he replied instantly. Then a look of suspicion crept into his eyes. "Why are you asking?" That look was like an icicle, freezing me to the core. He was probably worried that I would be childish again and do something to ruin things for his fiancée. I looked away, staring out the window at the lavender field in the yard, the one Julian had planted with his own hands years ago. My voice was so soft it almost drifted away in the wind. "I just wanted to get a wedding gift for you and Victoria." He waved his hand coldly. "Don't bother. She doesn't need anything." I lowered my head, a bitter smile forming on my lips. Right. I had forgotten again. Dr. Miller said the cancer had metastasized to my brain and I would start forgetting things. I forgot that when I was a kid, Julian would do anything to make me happy, no matter how ridiculous my requests were. When I once said I wanted to see a real castle, he bought a plot of land in the suburbs. And built a European-style estate just for me. I also forgot that I had seen what he looked like when he truly loved someone with him around. Victoria obviously didn't need anything from me. I just wanted to show a little gratitude. For all the years he had raised me. We stood there in silence. The awkwardness stretched between us. The night wind blew in with a chill, making me shiver. Ever since I got sick, my body had become extremely sensitive to the cold. "Julian, I'm a bit tired. I'm going to head to bed." I turned around. I could feel his gaze heavy on my back. Until the bedroom door shut him out. When I woke up the next morning, my mind was a complete blank. I couldn't even remember what had happened yesterday. It wasn't until I checked my phone and saw the reminders, 2 days until departure. And to-do list for today that I realized what I had to do. Finally hired workers to dig up that lavender field and replaced it with cherry blossom trees that were just about to bloom. I took some heavy-duty cough suppressants before meeting Tristan. Since I had decided to leave, I shouldn't lead anyone on. I told him honestly about my diagnosis and my plan to go to Switzerland for treatment. Surprise flashed across Tristan's eyes, quickly followed by genuine pity. "Does Julian know about this?" I tried. Hard to recall, then shook my head. "Probably not, and please don't tell him." Tristan promised to keep my secret, pulled out a document and slid it across the table, asking him to take a look. When he opened it, shock was written all over his face. "You're transferring all the shares your parents left you to Julian. This is your inheritance." I smiled faintly. My parents left me a trust fund. It's more than enough to cover my medical bills. Not coming back to this country. Think of this as my way of thanking Julian for taking care of me all these years. After all, I used to be so immature and caused him so much trouble. Human emotions are strange. Out of nowhere, a memory flashed in my mind. 6 months ago, I was still heartbroken by Julian's coldness. "Get me to stop bothering him," he had said to me. "Hazel, can you have some self-respect? Stop clinging to me like a piece of cheap gum." Those words had cut like a knife back then, but remembering them now, I felt absolutely nothing. Maybe the sickness was taking away not just my memories, but also those intense feelings. The deep-seated pain and my inappropriate deep attachment to him. I looked at Tristan. "Julian's wedding is the day after tomorrow. He probably doesn't want to see me there. Could you do me a favor and give this to him?" After the ceremony, this share transfer agreement was my second wedding gift to him. Justin took the document and nodded solemnly. After thanking him, I went back to the Vance estate. The housekeeper, Martha, told me I had an international package. I opened it. It was a Swiss SIM card sent by Dr. Miller's contact. Suddenly, I felt a sense of relief I had never experienced before. For the next 2 days, I stayed in the villa, wanting to see Julian one last time. Before I left, just to say a proper goodbye. Maybe he was too busy with the wedding preparations, didn't return until the night before the wedding, my very last night in this house. He looked exhausted. I was in my room coughing so hard it felt like my lungs were about to tear apart. The loud noise naturally caught his attention. Panic seized me. I quickly threw a handful of cough suppressants into my mouth. But the moment Julian pushed my door open, I hacked up a mouthful of dark red blood. The white pills mixed with blood scattered all over the floor. My heart hammered against my ribs and my face went pale. When I was first diagnosed with cancer, I had imagined 1,000 times how Julian would react if he found out. But ever since I decided to go to Switzerland, I didn't want him to know. He couldn't cure me anyway. Knowing would just be another burden for him. I was frantically trying to think of an explanation, but he just curled his lips into a mocking sneer. I thought you'd finally grown up, Hazel, but you're still using the same cheap tricks, faking an illness. I froze for a second. Then forced a smile through the tears in my eyes. It's just vitamins mixed with ketchup. His face grew even darker. He glanced at my thin frame, swallowed up by my oversized sweater, and frowned. Is this house starving you? Do you really need to put on this act? His eyes swept across the room because I had packed up most of my personal belongings. The room looked incredibly bare. Why is this place so empty? It looks like no one lives here. My chest tightened, avoiding his sharp gaze. My voice, hoarse from coughing up blood night and day, sounded dry. You're getting married. Getting rid of old things makes room for new blessings. I hope you and Victoria have a wonderful life together, a happy marriage and a big family. He let out a sarcastic laugh. A wonderful life, a happy marriage, are those really the only words you have for me right now? Maybe because I used to care so much about his mood, I instantly picked up on his irritation. But I truly didn't understand what I had said wrong this time. Or maybe just my sheer existence was enough to annoy him. If that was the case, he would be much happier after tomorrow. 'Cause this would be the last time I ever stood in front of him. Tomorrow morning, when Julian left as a groom to pick up his bride, I would head to the airport and fly to Switzerland. I took a deep breath, looked up and gave him my most sincere wish. Julian, I hope you have a beautiful wedding. His brows drew together tightly, his eyes searching my face as if trying to catch some hidden motive. But my words were perfectly polite and my expression was completely neutral. I didn't even wait for him to respond. I turned around and walked upstairs. Next morning, I woke up early and packed my last suitcase. Fortunately, my mind was incredibly clear today. I knew exactly what day it was, the day of my departure. Outside the villa, luxury cars were lined up. Billionaires and public figures who usually only appeared in Forbes were gathering. Porters with cameras were crowding the gates, eager to cover the wedding of the century. They took my cough suppressants before stepping out of my room. The moment I walked out, I ran into Julian, who was wearing a custom-tailored tuxedo. He glanced at me, his face immediately clouding over. Is that what you're wearing to my wedding? A sharp pain hit my chest. I opened my mouth. But I didn't know how to explain that I wasn't going. Luckily, a voice from downstairs saved me. Julian, the cars are ready. We need to leave now. He pressed his lips into a thin line. Gave me one last deep look and said, go change into something decent. I gave a vague nod and watched him walk downstairs. Surrounded by the crowd, I could faintly hear an elder laughing downstairs. Why is the groom looking so serious? Aren't you happy to marry the girl of your dreams? I couldn't hear the rest, but in my heart, I knew this was our final goodbye. I went back to my room, looked at the framed photo of my parents on the desk and whispered, Mom, Dad, Julian is getting married today. I saw his bride for you. She's beautiful and they look great together. I touched the frame, my voice cracking. From now on, the three of us will be together forever. It was time. I stood by the window and watched Julian get into the lead wedding car. The convoy drove away amidst the loud cheers. The moment the villa fell completely silent, it felt like a piece of my heart had been carved out, but only for a second. I pulled myself together under the bewildered stares of the maids. I walked out carrying my parents' photo and my suitcase and got into the private car I had called to take me to the airport. All along the highway, the giant LED screens on skyscrapers and billboards were broadcasting Julian and Victoria's wedding. I watched silently, my eyes dry and aching from the wind. When I arrived at the airport, I received a text from Tristan. It was a photo of the wedding venue. The entire place was decorated with purple lavenders, flower petals falling from above. Purple diamonds. My heart stopped. It was almost identical to the dream wedding I had described to Julian a few days ago. Was it on purpose or just a coincidence? But I quickly pushed the thought away. It didn't matter anymore. I was leaving. None of this had anything to do with me. The second photo was of the ceremony. Julian looked dashing in his black suit and Victoria was stunning in her white gown. Tristan texted, I'll deliver your gift after the reception. Hazel, I hope your surgery goes well. Even though the photo made a dull ache spread through my chest, I let out a long sigh of relief. The last family member I had in this world had found his happiness. I smiled and replied, thank you, Tristan. I hope you find your happiness soon, too. I hit send and turned off my phone. A flight attendant walked by and handed me a small bag of wedding candies. Miss, today is the wedding of Mr. Vance of the Vance Group. These are being handed out to all passengers to share the joy. I stared at it. So the entire city was celebrating his wedding. I thanked her softly, unwrapped a candy, and put it in my mouth. It was sweet, exactly like the candies Julian used to drive across the city to buy for me when I was little. Except this was probably the last one I'd ever have. As the plane started to taxi on the runway, I took out my phone and quickly typed out one last text to his Snapchat. I was young and foolish. And I caused you a lot of trouble in the past. I'm gone now. Please forget about me completely. I wish you eternal happiness. After sending it, I popped out my domestic SIM card. Snapped it in half, and dropped it into the trash bag. Then I slid the Swift SIM card into the slot. Ladies and gentlemen, our flight to Zurich is about to take off. As the engines roared and the plane lifted into the air, I pulled down my eye mask. It blocked out the world outside and hid the tears silently slipping down my cheeks. Thousands of miles would separate us now. We would probably never see each other again. This would be the last time I cried for the stubborn, foolish girl who loved him with everything she had. From now on, in sickness or in health, in joy or in sorrow, I would learn to love myself. I would never look back. Goodbye, Julian. Goodbye forever. 3 hours after my plane disappeared into the clouds, Julian's wedding ceremony ended. The applause was deafening. Victoria smiled as Julian slipped the wedding ring onto her finger, and every camera in the room flashed at once. Then Tristan arrived. He didn't congratulate them. He walked straight toward Julian, placed a thick folder on the table, and said quietly, "This is from Hazel." Julian's smile disappeared. "Hazel?" Tristan nodded. "She asked me to give it to you after the ceremony." Julian opened the folder expecting some childish gift. Instead, he saw the share transfer agreement. Every share my parents had left me. Every investment account. Every property attached to my inheritance. All transferred to him. His face drained of color. "What is this?" "Her wedding gift." Victoria leaned closer. "Who is Hazel?" Julian didn't answer. He kept staring at the signature at the bottom. Hazel Vance. The same girl he had spent 6 months treating like an unwanted stranger. "Where is she?" Tristan's expression hardened. "She left." "Where?" "Switzerland." Julian's fingers tightened around the document. "For how long?" Tristan looked at him for several seconds. "She didn't tell you?" "Tell me what?" "She's going there for cancer treatment." The folder slipped from Julian's hands. Several pages scattered across the polished floor. "What did you say?" "Late-stage lung cancer. It metastasized to her brain." Julian stared at him. For once, there was no irritation in his expression. Only disbelief. "That's impossible." "Why?" "Because she was pretending." Tristan's jaw tightened. "She was coughing blood in front of you." Julian went completely still. The memory came back with brutal clarity. Hazel standing in that oversized sweater. The blood staining her lips. The white pill scattered across the floor. And his own voice. "I thought you'd finally grown up, Hazel, but you're still using the same cheap tricks." His stomach twisted. He had thought she was manipulating him. He had looked directly at a dying girl and accused her of faking an illness. Tristan pulled out his phone. "She made me promise not to tell you." He showed Julian the photograph of the medical report. Julian stared at the diagnosis. Stage 4 lung cancer. Brain metastases. Urgent treatment recommended. His hands began trembling. "Why didn't she tell me?" Tristan laughed bitterly. "You made it pretty clear you didn't want to know anything about her." Julian flinched. "You told Marcus you never wanted another update about her life. You blocked her. You blacklisted her from your company. You told her you'd rather let a stray dog into your building." Every sentence landed harder than the last. Julian looked toward Victoria. She had gone pale. "You knew?" he asked. Victoria shook her head. "No." Her eyes moved toward the folder. Then she noticed something. "Wait." She picked up the last page. There was a handwritten note attached to the transfer agreement. "Congratulations on your wedding. I hope the two of you have a beautiful life together. Thank you for raising me. Please use this inheritance however you want. I won't need it anymore." Victoria's eyes widened. She said she won't need it anymore? Tristan didn't answer. Julian suddenly remembered another conversation. Hazel had stood beside the window, asking what flowers Victoria liked. Cherry blossoms. She had asked because she wanted to buy them a wedding gift. And he had waved her away. "Don't bother. She doesn't need anything." His chest tightened. Then another memory surfaced. Lavender. Her favorite flower. The wedding she had described. Purple diamonds. A lavender-themed venue. A ring shaped like a lavender blossom. Julian's eyes snapped toward Victoria. "Why did you choose lavender?" Victoria looked confused. "I didn't." "What?" "I wanted cherry blossoms." Julian stopped breathing. The entire wedding venue had been decorated with lavender. The purple diamond ring had been custom ordered weeks ago. He had arranged it himself. Because somewhere beneath all the anger, he had remembered every detail Hazel had once dreamed about. He had remembered. He simply hadn't realized who the dream belonged to anymore. Tristan stared at him. "You built her dream wedding." Julian's face crumpled. "I thought it was Victoria's." Victoria quietly removed the ring from her finger. "Then this wedding shouldn't have happened." Julian looked at her. She placed the ring on the table. "Don't look at me like that. I didn't steal anything from Hazel." "You did." The room went silent. Julian's phone suddenly vibrated. A notification appeared. Snapchat, Hazel Vance. His blocked account had somehow received a message. He opened it. "I was young and foolish. I caused you a lot of trouble. I'm gone now. Please forget about me completely. I wish you eternal happiness." Julian read it once. Then again. Then a third time. His eyes burned. He immediately tried calling. The number didn't work. He called Marcus. Find Hazel. Marcus hesitated. Mr. Vance. Find her. Sir, she's already left the country. Then find the flight. I don't think that's appropriate. I said find her. Julian grabbed his coat and rushed toward the exit. Victoria watched him go. Where are you going? He stopped. For a moment, his back was turned toward her. Then he whispered. To apologize. Victoria's expression was painfully calm. Julian. He looked back. Some apologies arrived too late. He didn't respond. He ran. But by the time he reached the airport, my plane had already crossed the Atlantic. And thousands of miles away, I was asleep behind an eye mask, unaware that the man I had spent 6 months trying to reach was finally desperate to hear my voice. For the first time, Julian wanted me to come home. But I had already decided that home was no longer a place. It was something I would have to build for myself. When I landed in Zurich, my phone showed no messages. That was exactly what I expected. I turned it on only long enough to contact Dr. Miller, then switched it back off. Outside the airport, the Swiss air was painfully cold. I pulled my coat tighter and looked up at the gray sky. I had made it. For the first time, there was no Vance estate waiting for me. No security guards. No housekeeper checking whether I had eaten. No Julian. Just me. And somehow, that frightened me more than the cancer. Dr. Miller was waiting outside the hospital. He looked at my medical file, then at my face. You've lost more weight. I know. How long have you been coughing blood? I hesitated. Recently. He gave me a look that told me he knew I was lying. Then he sighed. Come inside. The tests began immediately. Blood work. Scans. Biopsies. More scans. By evening, I was exhausted enough to fall asleep sitting upright. When I woke the next morning, Dr. Miller was standing beside the bed. His expression was serious. The tumor is aggressive. I swallowed. Can you operate? We can try. Then try. He stared at me. You understand the risks? I understand. There is a possibility you won't wake up. I looked toward the window. Snow had started falling over Zurich. Then at least I won't wake up knowing I gave up. He smiled sadly. That's the first thing you've said that sounds like Hazel again. I laughed weakly. I was always Hazel. No. He shook his head. Back home, you were someone's daughter. Someone's niece. Someone's responsibility. He placed the medical file on the table. Here, you're just a patient. For some reason, those words made my eyes sting. I wanted to cry. Instead, I laughed. That sounds strangely comforting. Back home, Julian had become impossible to recognize. He hadn't gone on his honeymoon. He had cancelled every interview. He refused to attend the wedding reception. By midnight, the entire Vance family knew. The wedding had been called off. Victoria didn't fight him. She simply took off the wedding dress and walked away. The next morning, she returned the purple diamond ring. I won't marry a man who's staring at someone else's empty chair. Julian didn't defend himself. He couldn't. He spent the entire night in my bedroom. My room. The one he had complained was too empty. He sat on the floor beside my old desk and opened every drawer. There were almost no belongings left. But underneath the desk, he found a tiny wooden box. Inside were photographs. Me at 6 years old. Me at 10. Me holding the first stuffed bear he ever bought me. Me standing beside the European-style estate he built because I once said I wanted to live in a castle. And one photograph made his breathing stop. I was sitting on his shoulders in the lavender field. He was laughing. I was laughing. The lavender was everywhere. On the back, in childish handwriting, I had written, Uncle Julian is my favorite person in the whole world. His fingers trembled. Then he found another photograph. I was 17. Older. Standing beside him. On the back. Someday I'll make sure Uncle Julian never has to worry about anything again. He closed his eyes. That was when Marcus entered. Sir. Julian didn't look up. Did you find her? Yes. Julian stood immediately. Where? Zurich. His relief lasted less than a second. Is she receiving treatment? Marcus hesitated. Yes. Good. Then Marcus added. But there's something else. Julian turned. Her phone is registered under a Swiss number now. She hasn't contacted anyone from home. That's fine. She also removed you as an emergency contact. Julian froze. Who did she put instead? Dr. Miller. Something inside him cracked. He lowered himself onto the edge of the bed. She really doesn't plan on coming back. Marcus didn't answer. Julian looked around the room. Every drawer. Every shelf. Every photograph. Everything that remained of Hazel could fit into a few cardboard boxes. And he suddenly realized something horrifying. He hadn't lost Hazel when she boarded that plane. He had been losing her for 6 months. Every time she knocked on his door and he refused to see her. Every time she called and he blocked her. Every time she tried to speak and he walked away. He had been pushing her toward this moment himself. 3 days later, I was sitting in a hospital room when my memory failed again. I stared at the nurse. Why am I here? She looked startled. You had surgery yesterday. I touched my chest. Yesterday? Yes. I looked toward the window. Snow was falling. My mind was completely blank. I couldn't remember the operation. I couldn't remember falling asleep. I couldn't remember Dr. Miller talking to me. Then I saw the bracelet around my wrist. Hazel Vance. And suddenly I remembered everything. My parents. Julian. The wedding. The lavender. The airport. I started crying. The nurse rushed over. Are you in pain? I shook my head. No. Then why are you crying? I wiped my face. Because I remembered something. What? I looked down at my hands. I was supposed to forget him. That evening, Dr. Miller brought me my phone. There are 47 missed calls. My heart skipped. From who? He handed it over. I stared at the screen. Julian. 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 47 times. Underneath them were dozens of messages. The first one said, where are you? The next, please answer. Then, I know about the cancer. Then, I'm sorry. Then, Hazel, please don't disappear like this. I stared at the last message for a long time. It had been sent 20 minutes ago. I don't care if you hate me. Just let me know you're alive. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A part of me wanted to answer. Another part remembered the blood on the floor. His disgusted expression. You're still using the same cheap tricks. I locked the phone. Doctor. Yes? Can I change my emergency contact again? He understood immediately. To whom? I looked at the snowy city outside. Nobody. Meanwhile, Julian received an automatic notification. Hazel Vance has changed her emergency contact information. He stared at the screen. For several seconds, he couldn't move. Then he called Dr. Miller. No answer. He called again. Nothing. He threw his phone onto the table. Marcus stood nearby. Sir. Book a flight. To Zurich? Julian nodded. I'm going to see her. Marcus hesitated. She specifically asked everyone not to tell you where she was staying. I don't care. She may refuse to see you. Julian looked at the photograph of little Hazel on his desk. Then I'll wait outside. How long? Julian's voice broke. Until she forgives me. Marcus lowered his eyes. You may be waiting a very long time. Julian stared out the window. I know. For once, he didn't expect Hazel to chase him. He knew exactly what he had to do. He had to chase her. Julian arrived in Zurich the next morning. He didn't bring an entourage. No assistant. No bodyguards. Just one suitcase and the same exhausted expression he had worn since the wedding was cancelled. Marcus had warned him that I might refuse to see him. Julian said nothing. He simply stood outside the hospital entrance for hours. When Dr. Miller finally spotted him, he stopped. You shouldn't be here. I know. She doesn't want you here. Julian's throat tightened. I know. Then why did you come? Julian looked through the glass doors toward the hospital corridors. Because for 6 months, I kept telling her to leave me alone. His voice was barely audible. Now she's actually gone. Dr. Miller studied him. She's recovering. Is she safe? For now. Can I see her? No. Julian nodded. He didn't argue. Then I'll wait. I woke up that afternoon feeling strangely peaceful. The pain had eased. Dr. Miller said the surgery had gone better than expected, but the next few weeks would determine whether the treatment had worked. I didn't ask how long I had. I didn't want to count down anymore. I wanted days. Ordinary ones. The kind where I could wake up and decide what to eat without wondering whether it would be my last meal. I spent the afternoon learning how to use the hospital's coffee machine. I failed 3 times. The 4th attempt produced something that tasted like burnt dirt. I stared at the cup. Switzerland has betrayed me. Dr. Miller laughed. You're complaining about coffee after nearly dying? I have standards. It was the first time I had genuinely laughed in months. Then the nurse came in. Miss Vance, there's someone downstairs asking for you. My smile disappeared. Who? She hesitated. Julian Vance. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. I looked toward Dr. Miller. He didn't say anything. I took a slow breath. Tell him I'm sleeping. The nurse nodded. But before she left, I added. Actually, don't lie. I looked down at my hands. Tell him I'm awake. Dr. Miller raised an eyebrow. I smiled faintly. Let him decide whether he really wants to hear what I have to say. 10 minutes later, Julian entered my room. He stopped in the doorway. I barely recognized him. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was messy. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I almost laughed. The man who had once refused to let me enter his company looked like he was afraid to take one step inside my hospital room. Hi, he said. I nodded. Hi. His eyes immediately landed on the scar beneath my hospital gown. His face turned white. He looked away. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. He stepped closer. I didn't know. I know. I thought you were pretending. I know. I thought you were trying to get my attention. I know. Each answer made his expression worse. Finally, he whispered. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him. You told me not to. He froze. I never said that. You did. My voice remained calm. You told me to have some self-respect. You told me to stop clinging to you like cheap gum. You told Marcus you never wanted another update about my life. Julian closed his eyes. I was angry. So was I. I didn't mean it. I know. Then why did you believe it? I stared at him. Because you said it so convincingly. That silenced him. I turned toward the window. I don't blame you anymore. His eyes reddened. I wish you did. I looked back. Why? Because then I'd know there was still something between us. I almost smiled. Julian, there is something between us. His expression changed. Really? Yes. I held up the hospital bracelet. A lifetime of memories. His face crumpled. But not a future. He lowered his head. I understand. No, you don't. I slid out of bed and walked toward the window. You think if you apologize enough, everything can return to the way it was. I don't. You think I'll eventually come home? He didn't answer. You think because you finally regret hurting me, I should make you feel better. His eyes filled with tears. I don't want you to make me feel better. Then what do you want? He looked at me. I want you alive. My chest tightened. That's all. He wiped his face. I don't care if you never come home. I don't care if you never forgive me. I don't even care if you never speak to me again. His voice cracked. Just live. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I whispered. I'm trying. Julian nodded. Then let me help. I shook my head. No. His shoulders fell. You don't have to. I turned toward him. Julian, I spent 6 months trying to make you look at me. He swallowed. I know. I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing the same thing. You won't. Good. He nodded. Then he placed something on the table. A small wooden box. I recognized it immediately. My childhood photos. I found them. I stared at the box. You brought them all the way here? Those belong to you. He paused. Everything that belongs to you is yours. I didn't touch it. After a long moment, he walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned around. I won't bother you anymore. I nodded. He opened the door. Then I heard myself say, Julian. He stopped. I looked at his back. Thank you for coming. He didn't turn around. His shoulders shook once. Then he quietly walked away. That night, I opened the wooden box. Photographs spilled across my blanket. My parents. The castle. The lavender field. Julian carrying me on his shoulders. I smiled through tears. Then I found something I had never seen before. A photograph of me sleeping on the couch when I was 8. On the back, Julian had written. She says she doesn't need me anymore. She still holds my sleeve when she sleeps. I stared at the handwriting. Then another. Me at 12. She said she hates birthdays now. I bought 23 cakes anyway. Another. Me at 16. She wants to study psychology. I hope she realizes she can become anything she wants. I covered my mouth. Then I found the last photograph. It was recent. Me standing in the lavender field before I left. Someone had taken it from a distance. On the back were only 6 words. I don't know how to lose her. My tears finally fell. Outside the hospital, Julian sat alone in his car. Marcus approached the window. Sir. Julian didn't respond. Should I book the hotel? Yes. How long are we staying? Julian looked up at the hospital. Until her treatment is finished. Marcus hesitated. She told you she doesn't want you involved. I know. Then what will you do? Julian gave a tired smile. Nothing. Marcus looked confused. Julian leaned back against the seat. I spent years deciding everything for Hazel. He looked at the hospital window. Where she lived. Who protected her. What she needed. His voice softened. This time, I'll let her decide. 2 weeks passed. My treatment continued. Julian never entered my room again. He didn't send flowers. He didn't send gifts. He didn't ask Dr. Miller for updates. He simply remained in Zurich. Every morning, I saw him from the hospital window sitting at the same cafe across the street. He never waved. He never approached. He just sat there. One morning, I finally asked Dr. Miller. How long has he been doing that? 14 days. I frowned. He hasn't missed a day? Not once. I stared at him through the glass. Then I noticed something strange. Julian wasn't looking at the hospital. He was looking at a tiny lavender plant sitting on the cafe table. My favorite flower. I turned away. But that night, I couldn't sleep. For the first time since leaving home, I wondered whether forgiveness and going home were really the same thing. Maybe they weren't. Maybe I could forgive him without becoming the girl I used to be. And maybe I didn't have to decide today. 3 months passed in Zurich. My scans improved. The cancer hadn't disappeared, but the treatment was working. For the first time, Dr. Miller smiled when he showed me the results. You're responding. I stared at the scan. So I'm not dying? Not anytime soon. I laughed so hard I started coughing. Then I cried. I was getting another chance. Meanwhile, Julian was still in Zurich. He had never pressured me. He never entered the hospital unless I invited him. He simply worked remotely, sat at the same cafe every morning, and waited. One afternoon, I walked across the street and sat across from him. He looked stunned. I thought you didn't want to see me. I changed my mind. He smiled faintly. That's allowed. I looked at the tiny lavender plant on the table. You kept that alive? You told me once that lavender doesn't like being overwatered. I blinked. You remembered? I remember everything now. I smiled. That's unfortunate. You remember me as a nightmare. I remember you as a child who once demanded a castle. I laughed. You built it. I did. You also let me drive your car when I was 14. You crashed it. You told everyone it was your fault. You were 14. I stared at him. For the first time, remembering our past didn't hurt. It felt warm. Then Julian reached into his coat and handed me a small envelope. Inside was the share transfer agreement. He had never cashed it. I don't want your inheritance. I frowned. Why? Because you gave it to me when you thought you were dying. He pushed it back toward me. If you're going to live, you need your future. My eyes burned. I don't know what to do with that much money. Then waste some. I laughed. That's terrible financial advice. You're alive. That's enough. I looked down at the agreement. Then I tore it in half. Julian stared. What are you doing? Keeping half. He blinked. Half? I'll keep half. You keep half. He smiled. Deal. A year later, I returned home. The Vance estate looked different. The lavender field was gone. In its place stood a garden filled with cherry blossom trees. I stared at them. Julian stood beside me. I thought Victoria liked cherry blossoms. She does. Are you two together? No. Why? She got married. I looked at him. To someone else? Yes. Good for her. He laughed. That's exactly what I thought. We walked through the garden. At the center stood a small stone bench. My parents' names were engraved on it. Underneath them were 3 words. Love never disappears. I touched the engraving. Did you do this? Yes. Why? Because you were wrong. I looked at him. About what? You thought you were leaving everyone behind. He smiled. You weren't. I looked around the garden. For once, I didn't feel like I was standing in a graveyard. I was standing somewhere new. My new home. My new life. And when Julian held out his hand, I took it. Not because I was afraid of being alone. Not because I needed him. Because I wanted to. He smiled. Welcome home, Hazel. I looked at the cherry blossoms drifting through the air. Then I smiled back. Home looks different now. Is that bad? No. I squeezed his hand. It's better. And this time, when I walked through the front door of the Vance estate, I wasn't returning as the abandoned little girl who desperately wanted to be loved. I was returning as someone who had finally learned how to love herself first. And Julian? He finally understood that love wasn't about holding on tighter. Sometimes, it meant giving someone the freedom to leave. And being grateful when they chose to come back.